Daughter?
one daughter, 8 years old. Super nice, super stoked to be part of the Pirates. I think that motivated their choice, which was great because we did not want a anti-pirate person. So yeah, so
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's
Appreciate it.
sure you guys would have met him too if it hadn't been raining so much lately.
Oh, yeah.
It's been crazy in the street.
Did they?
Yeah, they're officially moved in. Yeah, they moved in, I think 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and they're still having some work done, but yeah, they seem super nice and they came to our.
Paul City was.
We had one of our monthly meetings, which is going to switch to biweekly here, planning meetings, and they came to that last night. And
Nice.
we had all kinds of ideas for their yard, and they didn't. They got excited about
I
it.
always get so nervous saying her name now because I always
Because we
screw it
always
up.
thought
Every
that's a
time I'm
great
like,
stage if we just get that house.
L.
So.
She preferred that. The
Yeah.
street. Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
We did.
No, Friday.
We did.
Saturday.
We did Friday and Saturday. Yeah.
I preferred that just because how many people were going and crisscrossing and everything. Like,
Yeah. Halloween's on Monday this year, so we're probably going to do Saturday, Sunday, Monday, maybe even Friday. We're going to spread the coin return out over a couple days, do some other things like that, try to manage things. But yeah, we got new stuff planned. Might be a Kraken. So
beautiful.
yeah, we're gonna have fun. So, are you guys gonna do any pirate decorations this year?
We were planning on just doing like a few that said like the show down that way because we had like some people we noticed that would because you had that sign that was on Pinehurst that said show down and they kind of walked, but you know how like, your street kind of
Oh yeah, they didn't see it.
don't be afraid.
You need a skeleton with a banjo.
Like
You
in
know, like
college,
at the
you make
beginning
you
of the
sit up
Pirates of
front.
the Caribbean ride, and a sign that points down the street.
Atlanta will not be here.
Yeah,
But
we're gonna talk to your neighbor and
Sean's remote.
see if we can't put lanterns, continue the lanterns all the way to the end of the street.
Oh,
Yeah. Your tree's kind of small for
Our
that.
tree, we had to replace it a few years ago.
Yeah, twice.
Correct, twice. That's a good memory.
Yes, I remember that.
I love my Green Mountain maple.
HR manager.
Maybe you replace it with something else that's not a Green Mountain maple.
That was so dumb.
Well, I think it was.
She has a lot of questions for you tonight.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I'm glad the HOA.
You want me to
they
start?
paid for it all. And
Yeah, that was the right thing to
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Like, the right thing. But they
All
just
right.
literally changed it. Like,
I will now call to order the City of Sherwood Budget Committee meeting for June 13th, 2022. David, will you please do the roll call?
Chair Strode,
Here.
Vice Chair Fairbanks,
Present.
Matt Kaufman. Here. Paul Mayer. I know he said he might not be able to make it. Lana Painter. Thomas Sherwood.
Here.
Nancy Taylor.
Here.
Mayor Mays. Council President Rosner.
Here.
Councilor Browse.
Here.
Councilor Garland.
Here.
Councilor Giles.
Here.
Councilor Scott.
Here.
Councilor Young.
Here. All right, I will turn it over to Keith Campbell for discussion on new business.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Members of the Budget Committee, we talked about in my budget message and presentation that we really wanted this to be a dialogue and a conversation. So we're here tonight to continue the conversation about the proposed budget. We did have some additional information that was asked, and we provided that to the council, or to the whole group prior to this meeting. We're happy to go over that. But really what we wanted to say at this point is it's your meeting. So where would you like us to go, and where can we go to answer any additional questions you may have? So turn it over to the group to ask away.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair. Keith, and David appreciate putting the budget together and the proposal. I think a lot of what you're proposing is important things. In the general fund, with a 5-year forecast, I didn't really need the questions asked, but they were asked, and you provided information. I do believe that, well, first of all, we're in a great position because of the hard work of staff and previous councils, the fantastic capture of the grant for CARES and the closing over 2 years of the old urban renewal district is definitely giving us opportunity. Because without those two things, we would definitely be in a different situation. But thankfully, we are. The 5-year forecast that David put together and staff put together, I would consider that a top line, very optimistic forecast. The conservative forecast that Tim gave numbers that Keith and David put in the graph on page 10 on the top, I would consider what is my personal expectation, assuming things don't go to hell in a handbasket. But if they do stress test, might not be as bad, but would be bad, but hopefully won't happen, which is on the bottom of page 9. And from a big picture perspective, without the numbers that David and Tim crunched for us, inflation hurts all cities in Oregon by the model that we deal with, because we're limited to how much kind of a growth we can have. When we have controlled inflation of, in the 2% range, it makes life a lot easier for us. As a city, as we grow, when our main revenue source is property tax revenue, for 1% growth of property tax revenue, it's equivalent of 50 to 60 lots being built. Normally, most of those lots, single-family detached. I think going forward, because of what we passed today, it's going to be a mix. We're going to get some single-family, we might get some duplexes. With rising interest rates, I think we might get more plexes than singles. We'll just see. But I think the development community will adjust, and we will get those lots built that have been outlined in the budget. But that still only represents, 1% growth a year over 5 years, maybe 1.5 on a couple years. Then on a commercial or industrial side, for 1% growth, it's about a $30 million worth of development, round numbers. And I think we'll get that once or twice in the next 5 years, depending upon things. So we're benefiting in the next couple of years because of the closing of the urban renewal to get that lift, which is great. But then I think as the graph on the top of page 10 shows, much more of what I would think we'll see, which is still pretty darn good. We because of good things that have happened, tough choices that we've made, and things we've done in the past 20 years, if things pluck along, and if we don't get kicked in the teeth, and there's not a pause for some reason in development, it's just going to be that much more like that kind of a graph.
Can I just talk for a little bit about how I got to those numbers, since you
Yeah,
called
yeah,
me out on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just for everybody's information, I actually went to the county website and pulled all the tax rolls for going back to actually 2008, because in there you can find out exactly what the assessed market value was, what the imposed taxes were, et cetera. You can compare that against the budgets to see which we actually collected, and backed into the math to figure out, okay, once you take the 3% away, what was the growth per year outside of the URAs, right? Because that's the TIFs are going to a different account. And so the numbers I put forward were in the conservative forecast were based on just the last 5 years and what that looks like. The other way I attacked it, and you were alluding to this, Keith, as well, is I looked at the number of houses you guys are projecting. I went and looked at what our current hotel taxes are, what Langer's existing facility is, if we did two more like things with the existing storage units, and did all the math on that, and that came to about 1.9% on top of the 3%. So that's how I got to those numbers. I was looking at history, going back and looking at the impacts of. I even went back and looked like the lift we got from Target and Walmart. Of course, all those were in the URA. And it's the tax law gets a little complicated, but that's where I was trying to get. I felt the 4% was if 4 to 5% in the out years just seemed like to me, if we just had amazing years, it didn't feel to me to be a conservative forecast.
Yeah, and the challenge is just we just don't have the land stock.
Right.
So you've allocated, or planned for all the units that are available on Brookman, some units in Old Town, a bunch of the units, or all the units on Murdoch, a bunch of units in Old Town, and 150 of the units on Brookman. That's a matter of the timing of when more down in Brookman, but it's limited really what's down in Brookman. If we're finishing Sherwood West master plan, hopefully we'll wrap it up, approve it locally this fall. We'll go to Metro, however long Metro will take to approve it. But it's 3 years before you can do a residential ask for Sherwood West. And then you have a minimum of 3 years before anything comes out of the ground. So that's 6 years for residential out that way. If it's approved, there's potential for industrial to happen faster than that. There's mechanisms. But I think it's important in a big picture for us to just follow history and not be as aggressive with the numbers. Hopefully, David's right, and I also want to agree that on the expense side, the numbers that you present are conservative, and I appreciate that. We have a great track record of doing that. Staff does a great job of not spending everything for a variety of reasons, because the timing of things, the timing of hiring people, or the timing of projects that happen. So we will, I think, still benefit from that opportunity in this year and future years as well. But I just want to give my perspective and certain to not put words in Tim's mouth, but Tim's perspective on what I think is a more realistic 5-year forecast, which is still pretty good. A lot of cities would be very envious of that.
And one thing I found, which was really, you're talking about I don't want to say two completely different perspectives, but we were pretty close on the first 3 years when I started looking at the percentages and so forth.
It was just the 4 or 5.
It's just the differences of what we think would be growth for taxes, like we're discussing, but no.
Yeah, and
It's definitely the outer years, 3, 4.
And that's a credit to your analysis you did, and I appreciate that. I did want to mention the stress tests that I asked for in there, and the way I looked at that, and the reason I went all the way back to 2008 and crunched all those numbers, is just to kind of mimic what the impacts of that recession were on the city. And we saw a pretty dramatic, right when that recession hit, about a 50% reduction, almost 50% reduction in charges for services. So if we had a shutdown of construction and a major recession again, it's not meant to scare anybody. It's just kind of like here's good, here's bad, just so we understand that if we did have a recession, this is potentially what it could look like. And of course, we would have multiple years to react to that. But that was the purpose of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt had a question?
Oh, I'm sorry for not sending this in. It just occurred to me currently. but how do we forecast broadband revenue out 4 or 5 years? Because that could potentially be a pretty incremental.
Right, and we don't know at this point, because while we're building it out, until we see it, it's
Right.
tough. So that's an unknown piece at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, but like, wasn't the.
So right, it's important. Like in the I generally agree with David. The next 2 years with revenue forecast. Third year, a little bit of a difference. 4, 5, a greater difference if things are reasonable in the world. And then Sherwood broadband will be built out in 24 months, give or take. And so
That was kind of my question for those out years in the forecast, like just based on my understanding of what that revenue was for. It was to grow the city budget.
Right, it's another leg to the stool to support the community that because similarly, when I got back into this, 8, 9, I truly believed at the time, and it's extended, and we talked about this at a meeting. I thought we had maybe 5, 7 years to really focus on economic development and revenue streams, because people would start between technology and people's behavior would improve on Highway 99, and the ticket revenue would start dropping off. We have a pandemic, it doesn't drop off. We have construction, it doesn't drop off. So maybe I'm wrong, but I certainly have been in newer cars, and it's like, boom, it'll like alert you. There's a camera up ahead.
Mm-hmm. And one thing the city manager and I have talked about extensively, moving forward, we would like to start forecasting out just not the general fund. I mean, I know Brad's done a lot of work on, preliminary forecasts on broadband, but we want to start, it's not just the general fund we need to focus on. We need to focus on these other funds too, and make sure they're healthy for years to come as well. So that's going to be one of our focuses, just not the general fund too. So.
And I would add that the state puts a lot of restrictions on us on how we can share monies between funds. So there are ways we can share money between the broadband fund and the general fund. I mean, there's a whole list of tools, but it's not as easy as having it in the same account. I should mention.
No, that was kind of more of my question. It seemed like that was the intention for that revenue going forward.
There's multiple arguments, but that is definitely a significant argument.
That's a potentially very conservative estimate out 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. It's also, you could say it's also a defensive move for us too, because the state has a history of taking away funding sources for us, and there's it's just a side note on all this. The state commissioned a committee to study SDCs, because all the builders complain about SDCs, which is how we fund roads and infrastructure today and parks and all that kind of stuff. So we always have to be looking for new sources, because they keep drying up our other sources.
And our franchise revenue, we've seen in the wired phone, has disappeared. Franchise fees on phone services used to be a significant part of the budget. Now it's a drop in the bucket. Now we're seeing that erosion in cable TV. Well, the next buckets for erosion will be natural gas and power, because more and more people will get, like me, with solar panels on the roof.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned the confidence that you have in the, year 1 expenses, year 2 expenses, and the drop off. Frankly, in my opinion, in the business world, is fairly significant in 3, 4, 5. Those are almost guesses, just picked kind of at random, right? Is it the same way with the revenue? Do we give it the same weight in terms of, hey, we're pretty sure we can put our hands on the money in year 1? With everything being normal, like you say, and in year 2, we're a little shakier, but then as we start getting 3, 4, and 5,
So what we have going for us is we have a large spread from the market value of property versus the taxable value of property. So there's a long stretch before we have risk of compression.
Right.
So we will reliably get our 3% increase every year. So that's good. There is definitely still a housing shortage in Oregon and in America. So, and Sherwood is still a very popular place. So I have a level of faith if land is already acquired or secured by developers, that they will develop it. You know, maybe not on their schedule, there might be a year or 18-month lag, but they'll adapt it to the market, be it a smaller house so it can be affordable for somebody, or they'll do a plex of some sort on it.
Could I add to that? Because the way I thought about it too was, you know, you look at those out years, and I think you guys had 4.5% in the growth factor on property taxes. I went back to 2007 trying to find a year where we ever had that kind of growth. So I basically
Not till the 90s. It was the 90s.
that was when Woodhaven went in, right? But the you know, so just I basically, long story short, was just pulling it down to some, you know, what our average has been. I mean, it actually went up during COVID, you know, because we had a huge construction boom during COVID. We hit, I think, 2 and 2.1%, you know, if I remember right. So yeah, so that was kind of the logic in my head.
Right. In my mind, I'm putting together here are the forecasts for revenue and expenses. However, part of the job of this group is to figure out the year's budget, right? And so part of it is how much weight do you put on that while still, you know, you have to think of the future, but you've got to take, you know, some of the decisions that we're going to make today in this year's budget are going to affect, you know, obviously, I mean, this is what everybody's here for. And so I want to be aware of that, but also not give each of those years equal weight, because even though, you know, you did go back and do the research, it's also up in the air as to whether.
Well, and keep in mind, we're just talking about the forecast, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And for me, it's just a risk thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, so fixing a $500,000 problem in 5 years today is much easier than waiting 3 years to fix it, right?
Yeah.
You know, so it's just understanding what our risks and benefits are.
And and to be clear, if you're in reviewing a budget, when things go bad, you have tools to fix them from going bad. You know, from when in the housing collapse, we checked off a lot of things that you can't do again in ways of we hit points that just aren't available anymore. But things that would be available, certainly from what you do with employees, and then what you do with one-time expenses. In this budget, we've got $1.5 million, $1.8 million of one-time expenses. And so if things are bad, you know it's bad long-term policy, but you can make changes for a year or two, and then figure out how to make up for it later on.
And one thing, the only reason why I wanted to show, you know, this number one, just you have a great staff here. No matter what, you know, I'm going to respect the decision. This is the committee's decision. You have a staff behind you that can always, you know, they're always able to course correct, always able to adjust to whatever is thrown their way to keep delivering those results, which is that 20% kind of threshold. But, you know, again, I respect whatever decision is decided here tonight. So it's on.
Go ahead.
Just to bring it back though, that's why it's nice to know that broadband's in there really conservatively, because there's downside risks looking forward, but there are also upside possibilities as well.
Yep.
So, I mean, for me, I feel like, you know, we're sitting in a really good position, you know, with our balance, and, you know, both the top and bottom forecast on page 10 show us to continue to be in a really strong position for the next, you know, 5 years out. And if you look at the worst case scenario, we still have at least a budget or two budgets even to react to the world falling apart in that kind of scenario. So for me, it's definitely a risk, you know, risk reward calculation, or risk mitigation calculation. But for me, I feel comfortable, because I feel like we have time to react if we need to react.
I just wanted to say one thing too. Correct me if I'm wrong, David, but It looks like the track record of exceeding expectations, it looks like every year, you guys always exceed expectations. So, if you guys underspend and then fund balance comes in higher, that's going to change the 5-year forecast.
Yeah, and that's what I did just to kind of show you, because I know there's a lot of questions of, what has changed compared to last year. So page 2, if everyone looks at page 2, that very top forecast was basically that was in the proposed budget last year. Well, I just plugged in the 2 factors that we know of today, and that is, we know actually what the ending fund balance came in for 2021 and what we're projecting this year. And if I were just to plug those 2 factors in, that's what the forecast would have looked like last year. But of course, it's really hard to sit there and try to compare last year to this year, because now we have additional circumstances, whether we're proposing some new employees. So, I'd never like to do that, but I know a lot of people were like a little sticker shocked of what has changed. And, really, I don't want to say, really nothing has changed. We've always performed very well here at the city. And it was pretty amazing when I went back through and calculated all these to see really how well this staff and city, and, this is it's a team effort, whether it's former counselors, the current council, former budget committee. I mean, it was a team effort just to see the results that have continued to come in year after year. And
Yeah,
so,
I mean, if your modus operandi is to intentionally and purposely project both revenues and expenses in a conservative manner, the odds are that you're going to come in and overperform your projection. So, and that's been proven out over the last several years. So.
Yeah, and so then the forecast will just naturally probably be better if that trend continues.
It's a
has.
hedge.
Yeah.
It's a bumper.
Yeah.
To put the accounting professor hat on, that's the definition of conservatism, is what you're saying.
Like I said, we got really, 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 really creative in 06, 7, and 8, and then we got lucky
Including
after that.
including laying people off.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lot of suffering. It was
Yeah.
not fun. It was not easy. It was, and I don't like that at all. And then lucky is that we've got people that are abusing our community by driving fast and causing accidents, and the state agreed. And because if we didn't have that, we would also be in a really, really bad spot. So.
I like that.
I was just going to say, I was going to concur with Doug here that, first of all, this was really helpful. So I don't know how long it took you to put together, but I really appreciate it. Because what shocked me was this year's 5-year forecast compared to the one we looked at 2 years ago, where we thought it was just, not good. So it was like, how all of a sudden is it looking so good? And I understand the last 2 years we've had more ending fund balances, and so that's always helpful. But the
CARES money in there.
CARES money, the
One-time
ending of the
shot in
URA,
the
so
arm.
just all these little things that have helped,
build it up.
build it up. So
And I know a few of you weren't here the last meeting. One of the biggest, I don't want to say it's a flaw in the forecast, but that first year, you're saying you're only going to bring in the dollars that you budget and you're going to spend everything. And if you look at over the years, I put in, okay, what did we use in the budget and the forecast? You can see each and every year we're coming in like an impact on the fund in 2018, 2.5 million, better than what we thought. And it just kind of, as you said, Councilor Young, it just adds up. Mm-hmm. And then you get that shot I don't want to say shot in the forecast where, okay, now everything resets, so you kind of move up, and now you.
As I said in the last meeting, though, if you take out the one-time surprises like the CARES money, you're running pretty close. It's not huge deltas. It's better every time, which is great. Overpromise, underdeliver, or no, other way around. Underdeliver, overpromise, overpromise, underpromise, overdeliver. Sorry,
That's a new way. Hey,
That's my dyslexia kicking in.
So I'll just
But,
round out my comments was just that with all that information, this extra information, I think we have a good budget that's been presented to us.
And this is something where, we really need to talk about as a committee. And it doesn't have to be now, because I know I really need to get a budget passed. I'm starting to get a little heart attack here for Friday.
Oh, we're having another meeting.
Yeah, exactly. But I know Keith had talked about, we're gonna start having quarterly budget committee meetings, and, you know, we could start laying out expectations of, was this very helpful, you know, going in kind of, you know, giving you a story of the forecast versus, you know, you're just seeing it on a page and wondering what's going on. And is it various forecast models that you would like to see, like, hey, everything's rosy, conservative, and, you know, the bottom is falling out, kind of. You know, that's something we can talk about next year, but.
I think
like that.
scenarios are always good. Go ahead.
I like that approach because I feel like the talk of the forecast has dominated all of our budget meetings, and to me, it should be like, if we're having that conversation throughout the year, and we might spend some time on it in one of the budget meetings, but then we should be talking about the budget instead of the forecast. And I agree, it's an important part of it, but it feels like it's been too much of this conversation for my taste.
And I'm hoping a story would help, you know, help answer some questions beforehand, just to kind of streamline the meetings, so.
Hope that we were going to do regular meetings throughout the year, and for a variety of reasons, we weren't able to do it. Yeah, pandemic kind of kicked us around a little bit, but that will be good to do, important to talk about. I'm a big fan of truly having a 20% minimum reserve as a policy. I mean, we picked the 10% back in 07, I think, because we didn't, or we were bouncing around down there, and we said, this is really bad. We need it to be. So we wanted to say at least we're meeting the minimum, and then to talk about, you know, expectations as the economy is improving or not improving, or still stalling.
I agree on the 20%.
Really quick, I think it's a great budget. I missed last week's meeting, but I try to catch up. I just want to go on the record, I brought my concerns to David. Looking at the broadband fund, the cash burn on that is really high. Yep. And I think David and Keith had already said that they're going to forecast other funds, which is going to be great. But just making sure that we kind of focus on that, because it seems like the cash burn's so high that you have to take on more debt, and the revenue's just not there. And I'm a little concerned with where that's going to go.
It's not going to be a lot of conversation in here for a while, because it's proprietary stuff. But there is a plan, and the build out of broadband in town over the next 2 years is why we have the cash burn.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's just what I believe is why the budget committees is just to make sure it's reasonable.
Right.
And having $15 million in taxpayer debt being, full by how much do you take on to build this out, and how much time do you give it to build out? So I'm not questioning how you're building it out or the business plan behind it. It's just how much debt is going to keep accumulating on that fund compared to how much revenue.
Yep.
And again, the budget looks good. Everything looks good. It looks good. I just want to make sure that we look at that each time.
I have one other comment because I also missed last week's meeting. Does this budget represent, if I were to go to all the department heads that are included in this budget and say, can you provide the level of services and be competitive with employees and all of the other stuff without a reduction in services? Can you do it with this budget, or is this, if I go to them and say, is this the amount you need? They say, well, actually, no, there will be a reduction in service. You know what I mean? Like, am I?
So that was part of it. We got a presentation by every department
Okay.
head.
Did you?
while
Okay,
were gone.
perfect.
I will answer that since
Okay.
ultimately this is my budget and I'm responsible for it.
Okay.
So success of the budget would be the people that are sitting behind me who are so amazing. The failure is mine. So I guess I'm going to stand out in front of this one and say we have worked closely with them. And since I've been here, we've been having monthly meetings. And part of what I want to do going forward with them is to have monthly meetings and to really make them the champion of their budget to understand it. And we did sit in this room right here and meet with all the department heads and talk about what are your needs, what are your wants. Did a great job working with the CIP and working with materials and services and things. So I feel really confident to be able to say right now on the record that we have given them the materials and the services that they need to be successful and to continue with the services that we're providing. And there is, I think when I first started here, that was there's high expectations and we deliver, right? So,
Yeah.
and I think the staff really realizes that. So we did try to get creative in some ways, but I feel really comfortable that we're in a good position.
Yeah, because frankly, with the talent pool that we have and the, obviously, I know this is a great community to live in and work in. However, if we're not empowering our leaders to provide those extra services and provide frankly, I have zero complaints about the services that are currently being provided, but that's a great way to disempower some leaders if we say, we want you to still do what you're doing, but with 10% less budget. You know what I mean? Like, or you can't compete with, in the professional world, I'm having to compete salary-wise with just like we are with other cities and stuff like that. And so I just want to make sure that we as a city are going to be honest about this and either say, yes, we're giving them what they need to build, world-class teams and, the best the city can offer, or let's just be honest about it and say, hey, we can't afford that, and so we're going to, what's the plan B? Can we do? Because obviously we don't have an unlimited amount of money, but there's certain expectations when people buy extra house, they pay more for a house in Sherwood because they think, well, we're moving into this community with these other perks and benefits, and so that's why I'm just wanting to be 100% clear that we've got to give our people the tools if we expect the same level of services, or release the pressure and say, we're okay with having fewer parks or letting the grass grow longer, or you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So.
Well, I think you touched on, the very first class I took in my MPA was, congratulations, welcome to city management. Your job is to manage unlimited wants and needs with a very limited budget, right? That's like the first. The first thing they say is literally that was the first conversation in my classroom. But to your point, what our job is to empower them and talk to them and work with them and understand them and to understand how it's working, what's working, and to make them the champion. The budget process would go a lot faster if I sit here and just read.
Yeah, I get it.
I really want them to come up here and tell their story because they are the champions of their own budget, and they are the ones that need to be able to answer the questions. Dave and I both said to them, getting down to the accounting level detail, I don't care to dive that deep in, but if the budget committee wants to know, to be ready to answer those questions of what happened and where it is. And so
we have real restrictions in what we do. We only have so many dollars. So that's as in as we what we're doing in any department, we're not doing everything we can do.
Oh yeah,
there is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Staff we're asking staff to do the best they can with the resources we give them, and be creative, and be smart. And then it's like, we can't have that extra program for whatever reason, and it's usually money.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Sometimes it's facilities.
Yeah,
but usually it's money related.
Yeah, so as you know, I'm a software product manager, right? So the list of we want this much, we have money to do this much, so we can either change the priorities or we can add more money. So you know what I mean? Like I get the math on that. I just want it to be set on the table, and so that it's not especially the department heads, they don't feel like we're saying, okay, we're going to approve the 10-pound bag and we would like you to put 50 pounds in it, right? And so that's just what I'm just wanting to be really clear that, and I love that you're involving your staff and you're getting them all on board, because that's frankly the only way this all really works.
The other thing I guess I'd like to add to this is I've been really impressed working with this group that they understand the bigger picture, that they can, and I know David's nodding his head, that they can understand, that we're all sort of in the same
boat.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of rise and fall together.
Yeah.
And so in working with them through this budget, I was really impressed with this group understanding that And hopefully that continues. And we've talked about how responsible they made the budget. And we've called that out a lot because it's really important for what we've seen in success in terms of our 5-year forecast and in terms of our general fund dollars and our beginning fund balance is working too.
Great, thank you.
And I think one statement that you would have missed last week was, I don't remember what the scenario was, but there's some government entities that get down to the wire of their budget and they feel they need to go spend all of their budget or they're not going to get that budget the next
Yeah.
year, where our staff doesn't go on that spending free and
Yeah.
there's money left over in the general fund and they still get the budget they need for the
Yeah.
next year, or at least the budget that can operate their department.
Yeah.
There's probably always more wants, you know?
Oh, yeah, there is, but that's where the level of trust comes in, right? That's why I love to hear that between you and your staff, because frankly, you know, that's not everywhere. And if I can, you know, I trust, like, for instance, I know zero about account, well, not zero. I took 2 classes in college. Not a lot, but, okay, I'm going to say I know zero about policing. And so we are trusting that he knows how to build a department and a team and all the other stuff. And so we either trust him or we get somebody we can trust, right? And so if he's saying, here's what I need to do to build the team that you're describing, that you're wanting, the service, I love that. So thank you for involving them, and hopefully we can continue that, building that trust. So thank you.
Can I just add something to that?
Sure.
You bring up a lot of good points, and I think it's important to remember, because we have always been very fiscally prudent when it comes to our ending fund balance, and a reminder for those listening, a lot of that money has to fund operations till our property taxes come in November. So it's not like that's truly a ending balance, go spend it. But it has allowed us to do a lot of things other cities can't do, like Craig and his street maintenance program. You know, we stay up to date on our street maintenance. A lot of cities have to make tough decisions about, I'm not going to be able to maintain this street, and knowing that because I don't do it, it's going to cost a lot more down the road to fix it. So, as I always say, I know when I'm leaving Sherwood because that's when the potholes start. Right?
Yeah.
So I think, you know, there's a lot of value in being conservative because it gives us choices and options to do things right.
That's great, thanks.
Well, we don't do everything we want to do. We do things that a lot of other people don't. We have our art center. We have the best senior center, I believe, in the region. With the resources we give, I think we have the best library in the county, if not the region. Obviously, best parks and roads, and I mean, we have a lot to be proud of. We can't do what we'd love to do more.
Oh, no, yeah. I love it.
But I'm happy to say that one of my collective goals, I've told this to Keith, I think I've told it to Tim, is the whole sustainability concept of our community, so that we can maintain what we have and deliver great services, but not go back and ask the voters to tax themselves an additional amount. Yeah. If we have a prolonged period of like the late 70s of high interest rate for year over year over year, that's going to go out the window, because at some point that's just not going to, it's impossible. Yeah. It'll be impossible for us if we have high interest rates, high inflation for 4 or 5 years. I mean, if we have 6-7% year over year, it'll destroy. You know,
there's some simple math we always have to keep in mind long term. You know, that we get 3% a year plus growth, right? And inflation and everything else is outpacing that right now. So, and even when CPIs were low, construction inflation was always outpacing that. So, we're always looking. It's always going to be a downward line unless we're really smart about it and on top of it.
Just jumping in with a couple. So thinking about just kind of like what's priced in to the market rate, like the big thing that is happening is like a spike in interest rates probably over the next year. But from what we talked about last time,
we're borrowing no more money,
and we don't have a lot of exposure to like a 1-year jump.
Cost of money, no.
For the city budget, so that's
cost of construction.
right. So that there it could potentially get us, but at least we know that that there's hopefully some room to absorb excess.
It's one of the reasons we're accelerating so many projects right now. Just on the.
Yeah, I can see that.
we borrowed when it's cheap, and then on the cost of construction, like the bridge project, if you're 7% in cost of construction increase a year, I did the math one day, it works out to about $60,000 a month that we lose every time we delay. So we're trying to take advantage of the low rates and get things done while we can.
And then, the other thing, just to echo Mr. Sherwood's point, even though there are some things that we can't necessarily talk about, it probably does make sense to make a plan to kind of phase in broadband reporting and forecasting into what we talk about monthly and yearly, especially as that rolls out.
Other comments, questions? From a budget book perspective, I want to, I think it'd be important to put the conservative forecast, document that in the budget. If we want to have David's in there as well, great. But I think, because like I said, I appreciate, but I want to document the conservative forecast as part of the budget.
Did you have a comment? Okay.
So, on that point, first, I would move that we adopt or amend the proposed budget to adopt what we say as the conservative forecast on the top of page 10 of the handout from today's meeting.
Does that affect the budget?
Nope,
Okay.
has zero impact on the budget. It's just a part of the budget narrative.
Is that in addition? So is it like a high side and a low side that we're going to incorporate, or just
For me, I'm saying this is what I believe is a more reasonable 5-year forecast. I have no problem leaving the staff's 5-year forecast, and then we can just say, hey, who was closer, depending on things.
I prefer seeing both in there rather than taking away David's.
And normally what we do is we notate the changes, whatever changes are requested here, they're notated so we can notate that change as this is the forecast the budget committee wanted to go with, and yeah, then we can leave the current one in. So
that's my motion.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Do we have any other comments on the budget?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022-23 budget as amended.
Chicken scratch. Just make sure we're making the right motion.
Yep.
Okay. I thought so too, but sometimes there's
Yeah.
extra words.
Tax rate?
That's another motion.
Yeah.
that's the final one. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right.
Is there a second to the motion?
Yep. All right, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, hearing none, the budget is approved. And then let's make a motion for taxes.
So since you have the language, you want to make?
Yep. I move to approve the proposed 2022-2023 City of Sherwood budget, including the prior approved motion to amend. Sorry, that one's probably wrong. I also move to add the Sherwood Budget Committee approved tax rate for 2022-2023 fiscal year of $3.2.975 per 1,000 of assessed value for operating purposes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that passes. And then I think we're done and we're ready to move on to the URA. All right. Meeting adjourned. Okay. I will now call to order the City of Sherwood URA Budget Committee meeting for June 13th, 2022. David, will you please do the roll call?
Chair Strode,
Here?
Vice Chair Fairbanks,
Yeah, it's here.
Matt Kaufman, Paul Mayer, Lana Painter, Thomas Sherwood, Nancy Taylor.
Here.
Mayor Mays.
Here.
Council President Rosner.
Here.
Council Browse.
Here.
Councilor Garland.
Here.
Councilor Giles.
Here.
Counselor Scott? Here. Counselor Young?
Here.
Should I be saying committee member? Yeah. Okay.
We're all still,
I heard it, I'm like,
we're all still here.
Titles aren't right, but hey, you know.
I messed up Brian's last time.
We're all good.
Again, just like that.
It's called being human.
I won't forget it.
Just don't drink before the meetings anymore, right?
All right, new business, over to Keith Campbell.
Thank you. Same type speech as we gave before. We're here to talk about the URAs. We are ready to talk and discuss whatever you'd like to, and staff is ready to answer any questions you have as we look to adopt these budgets.
I'm happy.
Does anybody have any comments on the urban renewal budget for the original URA?
For the final time, I think.
I'll make a motion to approve the URA budget for the original URA for 2022-23.
All right,
Should it all be in one motion?
I don't have the taxes on here.
No, it's a dollar amount, because we're
Oh, okay, okay.
drawing it down.
Would you like to restate the
Yep.
motion?
I move to approve the proposed 2022-2023 original Sherwood Urban Renewal Agency budget. I also move that the committee approve taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year of $1,503,800 for operating purposes.
I'll second as amended.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none. So we close this, do we close? Nope, all right. All right. We have any discussion on the second URA?
But you should just read that motion.
All right, hearing none, I move to approve the proposed 2022-2023, 2021 Sherwood Urban Renewal Agency budget. I also move that the committee approve taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year of $480,000 for operating purposes. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, and that passes. And I think we are adjourned.
All right, before everyone leaves, I just want to thank you all for your time and commitment and, you know, your service to the city of Sherwood, to the residents here. I mean, I know this is a long process, but it's bottom of my heart, thank you. You know,
I will echo exactly what he said and look forward to continuing to make this budget a better document and something we can continue to improve on. So thank you from my bottom of my heart too. I really appreciate all your work and help.
Can I?
We're already having that conversation to start to be able to do it and to get them on the calendars and start to have, you know, meaningful conversations.
I can start to develop, I don't want to say the spring budget calendar, but just kind of throughout the year budget calendar and then start looking at, yeah.
And I have a suggestion for next year too. I'd like to return to having the budget meetings spaced out a couple weeks each, so that when there's questions, you guys have time to respond, and we're not in a big crunch like we were this year. And if we have to start earlier, that's fine.
Well, it was a unique situation because we had a new city manager and a lot of things happening, and so it's completely.
Yeah, I think what you'll see is just suggestions, comments, you know, areas that we'd like to see us improve on or do that. So if the budget is improving, then we're not doing something right. So we'll look forward to having those conversations.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, meeting adjourned.